Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed the series Music and Stories of Christmas. Tonight, Christmas Eve, I want to share the final story of the series. Music and Stories of Christmas, A Young Man's Silent Night. So as I jokingly say, grab a cup of coffee, a cup of cocoa, and maybe someone you love. It's story time. Once upon a time, there was a young man who as a child was considered a good boy. Not perfect by any standard, but in most instances, in Santa's naughty or nice book, he ranked on the side of nice, even if it were just by a hair. Of course, he had his faults. He talked a lot. When I say a lot, to the point his teacher scolded him and gave him X's on disciplinarian reports at school. His teacher reported to his parents, "He is such a good boy, but..." The "but" was the jinx of the problem, and the negatives would follow him, and I quote, "talkative, excitable, and jovial to a fault." His brother even quipped, "He didn't talk for a long time, but once he started, he never shut up." How could he be quiet? There was too much in the world to talk about and be excited about, including Christmas, when Santa would bring the most eye-popping toys to place under the tree. And don't forget the stocking filled with delectable sweets. Thank goodness he was a good boy and brushed his teeth each night. Although his faults seemed part of his DNA and always with him as his shadow, his great aunt always told him, "You have a halo over your head." He jokingly replied, "And it's held up by horns." But what else is expected for a boy who is son to a missionary Baptist preacher and two grandfathers, also missionary Baptist preachers? There was no room for error. It seemed he had so much Jesus in his life that if it could be so, he was predestined to be born clutching a halo and needed to only make small adjustments to it now and then for it to shine. Alas, if it were only true. The boy grew into a young man, and in his own way, he continued to be good, keeping up with his prayers and Bible study. He worked at the local mission weekly during his college breaks and early years at work. At the mission, he worked with children who did not have a home. One child, named Brandon, was the young man's favorite memory at the mission. Brandon would wait at the window, peeking through the glass and the steel security bars to know exactly when the young man would arrive. I am sure he could hear the putter of the small engine of the young man's Pinto pull into the parking lot at the Women and Family Transition Center. Brandon had a smile, as most would say, which reached ear to ear. He was small for his age and on the portly side, but his energy and exuberance filled the room. It seemed Brandon craved the attention the young man gave him, playing games, talking, and spending time on the playground. Bathroom duty was part of the young man's care for Brandon, and one evening, the young man supervised Brandon as he stepped up to the toilet. Let's just say that everything did not go as planned, and when he heard Brandon say, "Oops," the young man turned to see Brandon pulling up his pants midstream. "Brandon!" the young man exclaimed in surprise. Brandon just looked up and smiled. Even on top of the mishap, Brandon's mother thanked the young man for the care he offered her son. And to this day, the young man thinks about the mission and with utmost wishes, wonders where Brandon and his mother are today. Yes, even Santa would be proud of the young man for his work, to the point he left presents under his Christmas tree even through the college years. Although the young man appreciated all the gifts and love, especially at Christmas time, he felt something was missing inside. He didn't feel like the Grinch, but he felt his heart, like the Grinch's, was so many sizes too small. He shook off the negative thoughts, ignoring the pounding of his heart for several years. In a bah humbug fashion even Scrooge would be prideful of, the young man ignored the drumming of his heart which rivaled any horn or drum the residents of Whoville could have played. Throughout college, the young man worked hard at grades and projects, including editing the College Information Technology newsletter and a magazine for a small town. He believed being a good steward and proving his ethical and moral obligations supported his standing with God. He continued to play piano for churches, even through college, and he attended every Wednesday evening Bible study group and, of course, the church services on Sunday morning and evening. Even with the many blessings in his life, the young man lost hope. He worked hard to keep faith, but grew weary to the point of no longer finding joy in his life. It was no surprise then when one day, when the young man had grown so deep in despair, he called out to God through tears, "I don't want to live." It was in the next few seconds tragedy neared the young man. I believe God answered that prayer that day, but not in the way the young man expected. "Lord, help," was all the young man could muster to say as two semi-tractor trailers tried to squeeze his Pinto between the vehicles as they entered the on-ramp to the interstate. The trucks barreled forward as if they were on the Indy 500 track. Knowing he could not stop in time for fear of being rear-ended, and seeing the space between the two semis would not allow him room, even for a Pinto, he turned his steering wheel to the left to jump in front of a garbage truck. It almost worked. It seemed God had a lesson for the young man. The garbage truck tire, taller than the Pinto's height, swiped the car's gas tank cover. The force dented the gas cap and shook the small car. As his car was propelled forward by the force of the garbage truck tire, the young man looked to his right as he passed a car. He watched as the driver of a passenger vehicle stared in unbelief at the scene. For the young man, the scene, happening in seconds in real time, seemed to crawl at a snail's pace. He watched as the man's jaw dropped in shock, probably a reflection of the disbelief of the situation. Vehicles slowed, trucks pulled over, discussions occurred, information exchanged. Shaking, the young man drove home, spotting the two semis pulled over on the side of the road with the drivers looking under their trailers for damaged goods, possibly the expected remnants of a Pinto and driver. "Serves you right," the young man said under his breath. He thought about stopping and letting them know he was alive, but considered it was a lesson learned to carry with them. Slow down and watch for traffic. At home, his parents surveyed the damage. In shock, his mother said bluntly but quietly, "I can't believe you are alive." The three walked silently into the house. Soon after, the young man bought a new, larger vehicle. But I digress. That's not the point of the story. It wasn't until one night, many years later, the young man retired to his bed. In the silence, his heart raced, much like from a fear Scrooge may have experienced when the three ghosts of Christmas came to visit. Instead, the young man's calling was a spirit from above. With his heart beating quickly and a deep tugging at his heart, he climbed out of bed and knelt. "Lord, I cannot take these feelings of emptiness anymore. So I must ask, do I know you?" The young man listened as a soft but sweet inaudible whisper replied, "If you have to ask, you do not." The young man paused, just for seconds, as the realization of all the good he had done in life, the Bible studies, the prayer groups, the service to others, the church attendance, the offerings, the tithes, and his works, although honorable, had not changed his heart. His prayer changed. Instead of, "Lord, do I know you?" his words changed to, "Lord, I am a sinner, and I ask your forgiveness." The young man continued his prayer. "Since I know you will save me because you are calling me, I ask you to make me know it without a doubt." His mind went back to his years of doubts and to the testimonies he had heard from the older members of church. "Know it beyond the shadow of a doubt," he heard them say through his memories. All those years, the young man thought they had just more faith than he. He told himself they didn't have anything he didn't have. They just believed in it stronger, whatever it was. He asked a second request. Lord, I also ask. He felt in his heart the requests were from above. I ask for you to give me a song. In an instant, the young man felt a joy enter his heart, way beyond anything even the Grinch could imagine. And as his knees came off the floor, his mouth opened and he began to sing. Oh, glory, oh, glory, oh, look what God has done. Oh, glory, oh, glory, I've been changed by God's own Son. That night, the young man truly understood the words of the song, Silent Night, Holy Night. The Lord changed the heart of a young man through a new birth. The one night in prayer, the Lord helped the young man separate the lies from the truth, the fiction from the facts. In an instant, God had changed the young man's self-righteousness, similar to filthy rags, to white, more fresh and pure than new fallen snow on Christmas, all through the grace of God's Spirit. The man recalled the good and bad memories, the joy and laughter from a child at a mission, and God's loving mercy saving the young man from a near fatal accident. Through the years, the Lord continued to bless the man. At times that seemed the darkest or brightest, God would give the man a song to help him carry through the trials or joys. Through the tribulations or jubilations, God gave him stories to share and reflect on the goodness of God. As we come to the close of the music and stories of Christmas reading, may you continue the narration with your own story. May you find the true spirit of Christmas, and just perhaps, if you feel a stirring that's not in a cup of cocoa or up on the rooftop, but in your heart, you will recall the story of a young man who, maybe like you, had lost all joy, but found it in a silent night. Let's celebrate the miracle of God's Son, birth, crucifixion, resurrection, and life, not just at Christmas, but throughout the year and all eternity. Merry Christmas, and as Tiny Tim would say, God bless us, everyone.